I want to be the best that there is. I mean, I don't want to have anybody even close to me at what I do.
Play as hard as you can and knock them back. Every time I line up, I'll be going as hard as I possibly can.
I want there to be such a void in between me and the next guy that nobody can compare.
Well, it's turning face to stars and stripes. It's fighting back them butterflies. It's calling in the air, all right. Yes, sir, we want the ball. You mess with one man, you got us all. The boys are fall.
Welcome to the Front 7 podcast, right here and only on YouTube, and I am your host, Mike Presley. Thank you so much for tuning in here on whatever your channel you may have, and thank you for listening and coming over to my channel and taking a listen to the Front 7 podcast. And for those of you who are new, well, the Front 7 used to be on 89.3 The Storm, which was a radio station at the Carolina School of Broadcasting. I have now moved the show to a podcast form of sorts over on YouTube, so I can reach more viewers like you. And this is it. This is the big week. We started out with 32 teams who all had a shot at going to the Super Bowl. We cut it down to 12. We cut it down to the final 4. And now here we are at Super Bowl 47, where it is brother meets brother as John Harbaugh and the Baltimore Ravens face off against Jim Harbaugh and the San Francisco 49ers. And boy, what a game it is going to be between two of the rising stars in the NFL in Joe Flacco and Colin Kaepernick. Colin is only making his 10th start on Sunday. Now that is huge. To have your 10th career NFL start to be in the Super Bowl, that is unbelievable. For a guy who came in and basically took over the 49ers team, essentially because Alex Smith was injured, and to lead them to the Super Bowl is an amazing story. But it seems everybody is caught up in Ray Lewis's final game being on Sunday. I'm going to talk more about Ray Lewis's final game on Sunday and whether or not he will go out on top with a Super Bowl ring. Is Joe Flacco an elite quarterback? Many over the last couple years have questioned whether or not Joe Flacco is an elite quarterback because of him falling short the last couple years. But now, here we are. Joe Flacco took over the game against New England and led the Ravens to the Super Bowl in his 5th year. Can you say that Joe Flacco is an elite quarterback? I will discuss that coming up, and I will look ahead to the off-season. I will discuss the 2013 NFL Draft. Now, on the debut edition of the Front 7 podcast, I discussed at the time, which was the big Monte Teo scandal with the fake girlfriend, and whether or not that would hurt his draft stock come April. Well, we now have another player, another top 5 player that very well could drop out of the top 10, and that being Jarvis Jones, the outside linebacker from Georgia, or the projected outside linebacker from Georgia. He is expected to have a draft day fall all of a sudden. I'll have more coming up on that. As one of the mock drafts that I've read already has him drop into 17 to the Pittsburgh Steelers. And free agency will be right around the corner in March. I will discuss the big names that will be available and whether or not they will leave their current team and who could target them. One, including Darrelle Revis of the New York Jets. But that is all coming up later on in the show. But right now, let's go back to championship weekend to see how we got here. After the 49ers and Ravens both won, everybody kept talking about how the brother storyline was going to get old really quick. Here we are, Super Bowl week. It's Friday, and you really haven't heard much about that brother, about the whole brother aspect. So it's kind of like it's died down a little bit, but the media, I think, has the media has really, I guess they've tried to go away from it, because that's the obvious way to look at this game, is John versus Jim. It seems a lot of the media is, they're trying to dig up stuff on the players. I mean, you look at Ray Lewis with what was released on Wednesday, with the whole deer antler thing about him using some medicines to heal up, and it seems right now the media is trying to tarnish Ray Lewis right now. Not giving him the proper respect. I don't think they're not really asking him like, how's it feel knowing this is going to be your last game, but instead, just like when the Ravens were in the Super Bowl back in 2000, questions surrounded about the double murder. Here we are again, the media trying to find some dirt on Ray Lewis, but it's amazing to me how they're trying to tarnish his legacy before the Super Bowl. And prior to it, all they did was just praise him about how well he came back from his injury and played so well. But let's go back to the NFC Championship game between the San Francisco 49ers on the road in the East Coast playing the Atlanta Falcons. Matt Ryan finally got his first playoff win in the divisional round against the Seattle Seahawks. And it seemed the 49ers were going to lose, and we were going to once again miss out on the possibility of Jim and John facing off in the Super Bowl, as the 49ers found themselves down 24-0 early on. It was unbelievable. The 49ers defense was really exposed by Matt Ryan and the passing attack of Julio Jones and Roddy White, which does raise some concerns when you look at what Joe Flacco has done against the Denver Broncos and the New England Patriots, where he's thrown just beautiful, perfect deep balls. I mean, you just can't beat it. And that could be a problem come Sunday. I mean, if Flacco has time in the pocket, he's able to get the receivers open downfield, whether it's Anquan Bolden, Torrey Smith, maybe Dennis Pitta. I mean, if you look at how the Denver game went and the Patriots game, the Ravens could have easily blown out both teams. And that's should have what happened with the Falcons here. They should have been able to get up and blow out the 49ers. Yet the 49ers got themselves back into the game and were able to pull off the victory 28-24. It was truly unbelievable. Everybody talks about who's better in the clutch between Kaepernick and Flacco. Kaepernick, we can't really judge him. He's had only 9 starts compared to Joe, who's been in the league for, this was his 5th season. So for 5 years, he's going on his 6th season next year. So, plus, Kaepernick really hasn't had that many moments where he could say that he pulled the team to a victory under 2 minutes to go, when Flacco has been able to do that many times over the last 5 seasons. As I think most people, expected a Patriots and 49ers or Patriots-Falcons Super Bowl. They didn't really give the Ravens any chance whatsoever, and early on it seemed they were right. The Patriots were able to get up early. They were able to shut down the Ravens offense, but at halftime the Patriots led. Now here was the cool, interesting stat. Before this game, Tom Brady was 67-0 at home when leading at halftime. So they never lost with a lead at halftime. But the Ravens outscored them 21-0 to pull away with a 28-13 win, which now has the Ravens into the Super Bowl for the first time since 2000. I mean, this is going to be a big game, especially for those who love defensive football. I know everybody's talking about Flacco and Colin Kaepernick, but you have to look at the defenses here. The Ravens defense, after that loss to the Texans in Week 7, Dean Pease, their defensive coordinator, made some major adjustments that allowed the Ravens defense to be better. They were way better after that on the defensive side. The key change to me was the firing of Cam Cameron. And, you look at the 49ers, you could say the benching of Alex Smith was the key to the 49ers Super Bowl run. Well, for the Ravens, it was firing Cam Cameron. Now, you have Jim Caldwell, who's never called plays his entire career, and you just sit there and you think, what's going to happen? And in the Week 16 game against the Giants, where the Ravens had clinched the AFC North, we saw what was a sneak peek of things to come in the playoffs, because Flacco lit up the Giants the same way he lit up Colts, the Broncos, and the Patriots in the playoffs. So, you can see where, Joe Flacco has become a much better quarterback now that Cam Cameron is not around. And, speaking of Alex Smith, coming up, we are going to be talking about free agents, the big name free agents who are going to be available, and if they will leave their current team. Now, this is actually a big name list for free agents, because it is something that you will not usually see. Last year it was Peyton Manning and Mario Williams were the two big ones. Matt Flynn, but if you look at this year, especially the receiving corps of free agents, it is amazing of who's out there. You got Victor Cruz, who is a restricted free agent, and most likely the Giants will tender him a first-round pick, unless, of course, they come to an agreement on a contract. Dwayne Bowe of the Kansas City Chiefs, they're rebuilding, so I expect the Chiefs to move on from Bowe and go on and find somebody else. Mike Wallace, he's out there. He's a speedster type of receiver. He has amazing speed, which is a lot of what teams might look for, especially considering the way Torrey Smith just burned and destroyed Champ Bailey in the playoff game. So Mike Wallace is out there, and you got Greg Jennings. Donald Driver, he announced that he was going to retire on Thursday. The Packers have Jordy Nelson, James Jones, and Randall Cobb. Do they re-sign Greg Jennings? You have Wes Welker. He's 32. He's been inconsistent. He still hasn't learned to catch a ball. Maybe Wes Welker's wife can teach him how to catch a football. I don't know. Instead of running her mouth about Ray Lewis, maybe she should help her husband on how to catch a ball, because he still can't catch any footballs in the clutch. So, you look at this year's free agents, and it is amazing to me. Now, you look at the quarterbacks. It's a quarterback-driven league. So, you look at who could be available, and, Michael Vick is an option. You got Alex Smith. He's another option. He could land maybe in Jacksonville. What about Tim Tebow? Where's he going to go? Is Mark Sanchez going to become available? Jamarcus Russell is trying to make a comeback. Will any team make a run at him? You look on the offensive line, and any team could really help build a team by going after some of these free agents. I mean, I've said it before. I've thought this draft class was weak, and I just find it interesting. The free agency class is actually a whole lot better than the draft class. I mean, if you're looking at an offensive tackle, there is no like a Joe Thomas or a Matt Khalil or even a Jake Long, who is a free agent, by the way. You got Ryan Clady out there of the Denver Broncos. You got Sam Baker of the Atlanta Falcons. Brandon Albert, who was very underrated. He's a good left tackle. He's underrated. I think it would be smart for the Chiefs to keep him, but to move him over to right tackle. But I'll have more coming up on free agency right after this little pause. And still to come, I'm going to talk about the 2013 NFL Draft and why Jarvis Jones may just fall into the lap of either the Ravens or the 49ers.
Well, let's turn and face the stars and stripes. It's fighting back them butterflies.
Alrighty, and welcome back. This is the Front 7 podcast right here on YouTube, and make sure to subscribe to my channel for all the latest podcasts during the 2013 NFL season. And throughout March, I'm going to have free agency shows. I'm going to have a free agency recap. I will have a free agency preview, as essentially I will preview all the impending free agents and give you my prediction on where they will sign. Tonight, I'm just kind of discussing where they could go. But usually by the end of February, we usually have a better idea of who will be available, who won't be. So I want to have a whole podcast dedicated to free agency and my prediction on where the big free agents will land in 2013. Now, when I look at this year's free agency class, as I was discussing before the little break, this is a free agent heavy class. But if you look at this year's class overall, if you look at all of the players who are available or could be available via trade, it is absolutely amazing the talent pool that's out there. If you look at the pass rushers, one of the big names out there for the pass rush, if you're a team out there looking for a pass rusher, well, there's Anthony Spencer, defensive end, outside linebacker of the Dallas Cowboys. Now, the Cowboys are going to a 4-3 defense. So, how could they really make Anthony Spencer work? I don't think he'll work in a 4-3. I think if the Cowboys were smart, they would trade DeMarcus Ware and try to help rebuild that team, because they should at least be able to get a first rounder for DeMarcus Ware. That's a given. Anthony Spencer, on the other hand, he was on the franchise tag last year. It seems the Cowboys are going to let him walk. Defensive end Michael Johnson of the Cincinnati Bengals. He'll be 26 in February, so he is still young. He recorded 11.5 sacks in 2012, and the Bengals have a lot of cap room this offseason. A lot of players that are free agents, and keeping Michael Johnson is probably going to be their top priority. I do expect him to get the franchise tag. Tampa Bay. Now, we all know Tampa Bay. Now, of course, the only reason why they went on that spending spree last year was because the NFL mandated that you have to spend at least 90% of your cap. So when you look at Tampa, they could try to re-sign Michael Bennett. I think Bennett also could be heading towards the franchise tag, unless Tampa can come to an agreement with him on a long-term contract. Cliff Averill of the Detroit Lions, 27 years old, or he'll be 27. He's relatively young. He rejected a 3-year, $30 million deal last offseason. So you can kind of see that he's looking for that big money. What he's looking for, something most likely similar to what Julius Peppers got, what Charles Johnson got a couple years ago from the Panthers. Dwight Freeney, 33 years old, 4-3 guy, Tried to play in 3-4 when the Colts switched over. It didn't work out for him. I think Freeney could do a whole lot better in or on a 4-3 team. It's just a lot of teams, it seems, are switching to a 3-4. So where are some good places for him to go? OCU Minnesota, another big name out there. He'll be 32 in November. They transitioned. They have Justin Tuck. They have Jason Pierre-Paul. So OC hasn't really had much playing time. He'll be 32, but I think he'll find some team that will pay him money to be a starter. Now let's look at the defensive tackle / nose tackle position. Henry Melton, defensive tackle of the Bears. He had a big year for the Chicago Bears. It will be interesting to see if the Bears do pay him, or do they give him the franchise tag and just move on. Randy Starks of the Miami Dolphins is out there. Richard Seymour, 33 years old. He's a big name, but you know what? 33 years old. Can he still play? Now, we saw what happened when Randy Moss left the Oakland Raiders in 2007, where he joined the Patriots and had a big year that showed he could still play at a top level. Glenn Dorsey, now he was supposed to be the next big defensive tackle coming out in the 2008 draft. He is a free agent. So where does he go when you're looking at a 4-3 team? Maybe a 4-3 team that could fit him better than a 3-4 team. Or is he just going to be a nobody at this point after being a bust? The Steelers seem that they're going to move on from Casey Hampton, longtime nose tackle, 35 years old. He'll be 36 before the start of the season. Hampton is probably done. I imagine the Steelers will look in the first round at 17 at a nose tackle. The Steelers, they have to get younger. One of the reasons why they failed to make the playoffs is because they are getting old on the defensive side of the ball. And getting younger with a guy like John Jenkins, or maybe trading up for Jonathan Hankins, maybe that would be the best scenario for the Pittsburgh Steelers in April. Now let's look at the pass rushers here on if you're an outside linebacker. Now if the Ravens do win, some teams want to have a chance in free agency to most likely get Paul Kruger, who has come on strong during the playoffs here. He's played tremendously well opposite of Terrell Suggs. He will command a big contract, and with the Ravens, they have to pay Joe Flacco. Ed Reed is a free agent. Ed Reed has been talking about wanting to become a New England Patriot, so maybe if Ed Reed walks to go join Bill Belichick in New England, and the Ravens are able to get a deal done with Joe Flacco in time without using the tag, then maybe they can get the tag on Kruger to prevent him from leaving. As I said, the Bengals have a lot of cap space and a lot of people that are going to be free agents. Thomas Howard is one of them. Manny Lawson is another. Moving on to the inside linebackers, Brad Jones of the Green Bay Packers is the number one inside linebacker available. Daniel Ellerbe of the Ravens, 27 years old. I think the Ravens would like to re-sign him, because if the Ravens are able to re-sign Ellerbe, then that means with McClain and Ellerbe, then they can sit there and get another inside linebacker later on in the draft. And that will cover a need for them. So the Ravens have a lot of key players here that are going to be available, or could be available. Ellerbe is one to watch, because if Ellerbe leaves the Ravens, and it is quite possible the Ravens are going to have to spend one of their first 2 draft picks on an inside linebacker to replace Ray Lewis. Brian Urlacher. Is it an end of an era in Chicago? Brian Urlacher, is it time for the Bears to move on? That's the thing. I look at this and I go, the Bears can easily replace him, take Alex Ogletree, Kevin Minter from out of LSU, but luckily for them, it seems that he is willing to take a hometown discount to stay with the Chicago Bears. Now, let me see if I can find that report. So I'll have to find it here during the next break. But when you look at it, like I said, it's a pretty good amount of inside linebackers available. Another big name out there is Ray Maluga of the Cincinnati Bengals. Again, like I said, the Bengals have a lot of free agents. When you look at the cornerbacks here, now cornerbacks is going to be interesting because apparently the Jets are looking at trading Darrelle Revis. And I've been reading reports that they probably would like to trade Antonio Cromartie more than Darrelle Revis, but at the same time, you have to realize Revis, the money that he would be asking for, the Jets would not be able to give him. And the Jets could actually get a buttload of picks for Darrelle Revis. I mean, they could get 2 first-round picks for him, including another first-round pick in this year's draft. But if teams do not want to compete for Darrelle Revis, well, maybe you can go for Aqib Talib. The Patriots had traded for him at the deadline back in week number 8, and he played well for him. Everybody said, everybody talked about his issues, and well, Talib, he did very well for the New England Patriots, and it will be interesting to see if the Patriots bring him back after trading for him. Dominique Rodgers-Cromartie is also a free agent who came over from Arizona in the Kevin Kolb trade to the Philadelphia Eagles. But, do the Eagles want to keep him or will they move on? Especially since it seems they're looking to also transition to a 3-4 defense. Now, if the Ravens do want somebody that could come cheap in the offseason to replace Ed Reed, somebody who's young, they could look at Jarius Byrd of the Buffalo Bills. I mean, he has done such a great job in Buffalo. Now, you don't hear about him because he's on the Bills, and some team who needs safety help should go after him. Deshaun Goldson, another guy the Ravens could look at replacing Ed Reed. Ed Reed discussed in the media that how much he would like to play for the Patriots, and that it could very well be Ed Reed being in a Patriots uniform for the 2013 season. But if you look at the Colts, who need safety help, he could go rejoin Chuck Pagano in Indianapolis, maybe go to New York and go rejoin Rex Ryan. And like I said, as you can see, we do have a plethora of good free agents available. And I will have a podcast towards the end of February, right before free agency begins. And I will have predictions and more on the free agents of this offseason. And, well, like I said, the Ravens do have a good key amount of players available. They are going to have to do some cap cutting in order to maybe have a chance at re-signing Paul Kruger or Ed Reed or Daniel Ellerbe to go along with re-signing Joe Flacco. But on Thursday, Adam Schefter stated that currently the Ravens are $5 million over the projected salary cap in 2013, and this is before they even get anything done with Flacco. Franchise tagging Flacco would put them roughly $20 million over the cap. Cutting Anquan Bolden would save $5.5 million in the cap, and I believe Ray Lewis's retirement would save them about $4 million. And Schefter also added that releasing Jacoby Jones, who made that big catch against the Denver Broncos, would free up another $3.5 million for the Ravens. So it seems the Ravens are thinking ahead, and trying to figure out the cap situation, how they can re-sign some of their guys, including Joe Flacco, in which, when I return here on the Front 7 podcast, I will discuss whether or not Joe Flacco is an elite quarterback and what kind of contract he deserves after this playoff run that he has had. And right after that, I'm going to discuss Jarvis Jones' possible free fall in the 2013 draft. So stay tuned to the Front 7 podcast, and I'll be back in just a little bit. Alrighty, and welcome back. This is the Front 7 podcast, right here exclusively on YouTube, and I am your host, Mike Presley. And if you haven't done so already, subscribe to this channel for all the latest Front 7 podcasts during free agency and leading up to the 2013 draft, which I will be talking about in just a little bit here on the show, as Jarvis Jones. A lot of talk now as if maybe he could slide down the draft board come April, and I've already seen a mock draft that took him down all the way down to 17. Maybe some injury issues, work ethic issues. I'll discuss all that coming up. But right now, I'm going to go back to the Super Bowl this week. And I talked about before the break possible free agents. It's being reported that the Ravens may have to release Anquan Bolden to free up some cap space. Unless, of course, Anquan takes a pay cut to stay on the team. Now, one of the best defensive linemen on the 49ers defense, who tore his left tricep and missed several games this past season, he will play on Sunday, but he will need off-season surgery, as he confirmed himself on Wednesday. I'm not going to retire after this year. I realize my career is definitely winding down. I'm not saying I'm going to play another 8 years or something like that. He's 33 years old. How much longer will the 49ers want to pay you, or keep paying you, I should say? Pull up his contract here, because he does need surgery. He is on his last year of his deal in 2013. 7.5 he's due. He practiced in full on Wednesday, and earlier admitted before the division round game that he was risking a full tear of his triceps by playing in the playoffs. The league wants to try to protect the players, but yet the players, they're risking themselves by, here's Justin Smith saying, okay, well, I'm out there. He's going to get out there and play and risk a full tear and risk further injury. So when you look at what the NFL is trying to do with player safety, it makes zero sense when the players are out there risking it and risking their own injuries just to play. When you look at this Super Bowl matchup between the quarterbacks of Joe Flacco and Colin Kaepernick, you have to look at it and you go, well, this is not the Super Bowl and most people probably thought would have happened. There's no Manning brothers, there's no Brady, no Drew Brees, no Aaron Rodgers. There is no elite quarterback out there. All the elite quarterbacks are sitting at home. As I said in the top of the show, you have two young quarterbacks facing off in the Super Bowl, and judging from their play, this very well could happen again. And when you look at whether or not Joe Flacco is an elite quarterback, so many people questioned whether or not Flacco is an elite quarterback. Well, I think at this point you have to start admitting to yourself that Flacco is getting there. He's getting close to that elite status. Okay, he's not an elite quarterback just yet. He's in the second tier. He's below Brady, Manning, Rodgers, and Breeze. Okay, Flacco's on that second tier. He's not elite just yet. Colin Kaepernick, it might take him a while before we start talking about whether he's an elite quarterback. But Flacco, at the beginning of the year, said that he was an elite quarterback. And call it whatever you want, but I mean, before last season, Eli Manning came out and said that he was an elite quarterback. He felt he was in the same class as Tom Brady. He goes out there, takes the Giants to their second Super Bowl win over Tom Brady once again, and he finally got that elite status. Joe Flacco, this past year, he goes out in the offseason and says, hey, I'm an elite quarterback. Well, here we are, Joe Flacco, boom. He took the Ravens to the Super Bowl. And I have some reader email here I want to read regarding whether or not Joe Flacco is an elite quarterback and what type of contract we can expect, or what he can expect to get in the next coming month or so. First off, David from Baltimore, he asked, do I think Joe Flacco is an elite quarterback, and what do you think would be the right numbers for his new contract would be? David, thank you for sending me that email. And I kind of answered it right there for you before I read your email. Flacco is not there yet. Like I said, he's on that second tier. If he wins the Super Bowl this year, I think that's when I'll move him into the elite. If he leads the Ravens to the Super Bowl and the Ravens win, that's when I will put Flacco into the elite category with Brady and Manning, Rodgers, and Breeze. But if the Ravens fall short, beware of the backlash, folks, because Flacco is going to get hit hard with criticism if he does not win on Sunday. All week I've been seeing things like who's under the most pressure. I've seen this on NFL Network so many times. Who's under the most pressure in the Super Bowl? And I'm like, it's Flacco. I mean, why do you even talk about Colin Kaepernick? Kaepernick is not under any pressure whatsoever. We don't know what to expect from him. He hasn't had a full year of starting yet. So we have no idea what we could expect. This being only his 10th game, I mean, how can you really game plan for him when you've only seen him in 10 games? Or 9 games. So, Flacco, meanwhile, he's been in the league for 5 years. We know what to expect from Joe. And we've been waiting for him to win in big game situations. And he's finally done that. When you look at the type of contract that Joe Flacco could command, he could be the first $100 million Raven. When you look at what other quarterbacks have gotten, he could very well get somewhere close to $100 million. Maybe even more. But it could very well be an 7-8 year contract worth 90-some million. Incentives would bump it up to over $100 million. I mean, I'm looking at like a 7-8 year deal for Joe worth about 90 million, 90s, 95, 98 maybe. I mean, it's going to be a pretty big contract. Now, I do got another email here that I want to read. And it questions whether or not Flacco deserves the type of money that I was just talking about, and whether or not he would take a hometown discount. Jacob from Baltimore writes, I really wish that Joe Flacco would take a hometown discount to help the Ravens. I'm trying to scroll down and read the email. I really hope that Joe Flacco takes a hometown discount and does not tie up the Ravens the way Drew Brees tied up the Saints with their cap. I really hope a hometown discount is what Joe would take so that the Ravens can re-sign their impending free agents and keep Ed Reed a Raven and away from New England. I don't think so. I talked about it earlier. Brian Urlacher, he said, hey, you know what, I'd be willing to take a hometown discount to stay with the Chicago Bears. But, you look at Joe Flacco, I could see him taking a hometown discount to stay in Baltimore. I don't know. I don't see Joe as the type of guy that would ask for a lot of money. I think he would just want a reasonable amount of money of where he could actually be paid like an elite, but not too much money that's going to tie down the Ravens. So I can see that maybe he could take a hometown discount in this case. But again, I really doubt it because I think his agent will push him very much to go for a big-time contract. And it's been reported out there that Flacco is looking for $20 million a year, which is probably just agent talk. His agent out there, trying to spice things up a little bit in the media. I can see Joe taking a hometown discount, but at the same time, I just can't. Now, let's go back to whether he is elite or not. This is what Ben had to say. All this talk about Joe Flacco being an elite quarterback has really gotten to me. Why does it matter if he is elite or not? Shouldn't it be that all that matters in the NFL is if a quarterback can win in the big games and can win on Sunday? Whether you're elite or not, I believe the most important thing about a quarterback should be his ability to win games. You are right about that, Ben. But of course, under what you just said, that would make Tim Tebow a franchise quarterback because all Tebow does is win games. I've always said that myself. I've never bought into the whole elite thing, and who cares if you're an elite quarterback? I've always felt that way. I felt like it's always been about winning, whether or not you can take your team to the Super Bowl and win in the Super Bowl. Yeah, you can win all these regular season games and position yourself to be the number one seed and all that, but can you win in the playoffs is the most important thing to me. And then you're right. I think for Flacco, he has proven over the last 5 years that he can be elite, or essentially that he can be considered an elite quarterback. But again, I think you're right. It doesn't matter because as long as he wins, then what does it matter if he's elite or not? I'm going to take one more break here, and when I come back, I'm going to wrap up the show with my Super Bowl prediction of Sunday and Jarvis Jones free fall. How far will Jarvis Jones fall in the 2013 draft? I will have plenty of news coming up on that. So stay tuned for my Super Bowl prediction. I will tell you how far I think Jarvis Jones could fall in the 2013 NFL Draft. Stay tuned, and I'll be back in just a little bit.
It's knocking heads and talking trash. It's slinging mud and dirt and grass. It's I got your number, I got your back when your back's against the wall.
Alrighty, welcome back. This is the Front 7 podcast right here on YouTube. And make sure to subscribe to my channel for future Front 7 podcasts leading up to the 2013 NFL Draft. And folks, speaking of the 2013 Draft, Jarvis Jones. Here we are 2 weeks later after the Manti Te'o scandal. And if you missed the debut edition of the Front 7 podcast, feel free to go back and take a listen to it, and as I discuss the Manti Te'o scandal and how it would affect his draft stock. Well, this week we have another top 5 prospect that very well could hurt his stock or could take a free fall that we see players take each year. Because you see it, somebody falls, and you see the good teams are able to pick them up, and that's why they're always in contention. I mean, look at like guys like Edery and Ray Lewis who fell to the 20s to the Baltimore Ravens. Terrell Suggs fell to them at number 10 when he should have went higher in the 2003 draft. You look at Aaron Rodgers, who free fell to the Green Bay Packers, the number 24 in the 2005 draft. I mean, you could really go on and on about that. The players who have fallen to good teams because the bad teams are stupid enough to pass on them. So we will see what will happen in the 2013 draft regarding Georgia linebacker Jarvis Jones. A lot, I've seen him projected in the top 3, top 5, as he's been one of the dominant players in college football. And I have him on my big board where he's actually still in my top 5, because I'm not buying into this stuff about him possibly sliding down the draft board. I don't think the teams that are picking towards the top 10, top 5 would be stupid enough to allow that to influence them on passing on a great player like Jarvis Jones. Now, there is talks that he could very well fall outside of the top 5. This is on walterfootball.com. Again, great draft site. Great draft site. All news under a rumor mill here. After speaking with scouts at the East-West Shrine game, they say they expect Jones to slide down and fall out of the top 5. The reasons, he's not a good workout guy. They don't believe he'll test well with the combine or the workouts. Area scout in Georgia says he's not a weight room guy. He doesn't put a lot of work in during the week, but he would show up on Saturdays and dominate on the field, which should be the most important thing. I mean, yeah, he's not a workout guy during the week. He may not, be that type of guy, but if he's still showing up and it's not affecting his play, then I don't see the big issue here. Now, another thing that could hurt him is the fact that he has a medical condition, spinal stenosis. Now, the funny thing about that is that when he was a freshman at USC, the USC doctors would not clear him, and they thought that he should have retired from football. But yeah, he got a transfer to Georgia, and he's been one of the best players since. That's the thing about the draft. You take a gamble on a guy, every pick is a gamble. But this is just overthinking it here. The guy, if a player can play, that's the only thing that matters. Okay, if he has history of workouts, of not being a workout guy or anything like that, that's fine. But, and if it's affecting his play, then I can understand. But, if Jarvis Jones can sit there and not practice during the week and not have it affect his play, then this talk about him possibly falling out of the top 5 is ridiculous. Personally, I think Jarvis Jones will still be picked in the top 5. Jacksonville, you look at the top of the board. Jacksonville could do it. They need somebody. They need a pass rusher, and I don't think Jacksonville would be that dumb to pass over on Jarvis Jones, especially with their general manager coming from San Francisco, where he has seen Aldon Smith and Justin Smith. So he'll know what a pass rusher is and what to look for. And Jarvis Jones has everything you need in a pass rusher. If he somehow subs by Jacksonville, because let's say Jacksonville takes somebody like Starlo Tulili, or maybe they reach for a quarterback, then Oakland, who needs a pass rusher, Jarvis Jones, fit very well in that with that defense. Philadelphia, going to a 3-4 defense, they very well could get Jarvis Jones. Cleveland, Arizona, Buffalo. Buffalo wanted Von Miller a couple years ago, but they couldn't get him because Denver took him at number 2, one spot ahead. The Jets need a pass rusher. The Chargers, Many teams need a pass rusher that are picking inside top 15, and I just cannot see Jarvis Jones sliding down the board, because Walter Football, his updated mock, has Jarvis Jones sliding all the way down to 17, and I don't see that happening. Now one of the things here, I talked about it, the Ravens have been lucky and good players fallen to them. Well, Jarvis Jones, if teams are that stupid, then Ozzie Newsome, I think, would pull the trigger on getting Jarvis Jones if they are not able to re-sign Paul Kruger. San Francisco, maybe. I mean, that would be best player available, but I think this is just rumor talk. I don't think Jarvis Jones will fall in the draft. I think he'll still be a top 5. But I wanted to cover that because it just seems so stupid that teams would allow such a great player to fall down the draft board. I mean, I can't see it happening. Let's move on to the Super Bowl in New Orleans. Now, we all know next year the Super Bowl is going to be played in New York, New Jersey. And one of the things you have to look at too, next year, New York, New Jersey, the Jets and Giants play. Well, we have seen the last several years, where the Super Bowl host curse has affected the team of where the Super Bowl has been played or will be played at that season. And, well, you have the Jets and the Giants. So which team does the host curse get? Is it the Jets or the Giants? Or does it strike both? We saw it with the Saints this year. I mean, they were affected with the whole bounty scandal. And, I just thought it was kind of funny that it all came out the year the Saints hosted the Super Bowl. The host curse was able to get the Saints. Next year is going to be interesting to see whether or not the host curse strikes the Jets or the Giants, or does it strike them both? And one of the things that I've been reading over the last couple of weeks too is, well, Seattle might be in the running for a Super Bowl. They are trying to get things together to see what it takes to host a Super Bowl in Seattle. Here in Charlotte, after the very successful that was here, the city leaders here in Charlotte, they are trying to see what it takes to host a Super Bowl and bring a Super Bowl to Bank of America Stadium. I myself definitely would hope that Charlotte does bring a Super Bowl to here, or that Charlotte does get a chance at hosting a Super Bowl. I mean, it's a great city. I live near Charlotte, so I would definitely love a chance to go to a Super Bowl. But, speaking of a Super Bowl, it is time for the end of the show, and I'm going to lead off with my predictions. But before I do that, I do want to tell you, coming up, this is the last Front 7 podcast of the season. I do not do a post-Super Bowl show. I usually let all the media outlets out there worry about all of that. But for me, the Front 7 podcast is going to take a hiatus for a little bit, and I will preview free agency. And by the 22nd, we'll have an idea of who got franchise tagged, who didn't, and better idea on who will be available in free agency come March 12th. February 22nd is going to be the next Front 7 podcast, which will be the free agency preview show, along with my predictions on where all the big name free agents will sign in 2013. Now that I got that news out of the way, again, February 22nd, free agency preview special of the Front 7 podcast. But first, let's end the Super Bowl edition of the Front 7 podcast with my prediction. And folks, this is quite simple. For me, I feel this is going to be a good defensive heavy game. Yes, Joe Flacco what he did against the Patriots and Broncos, the Atlanta Falcons were able to do to the 49ers defense, I still think this is going to be a defensive game. When the 49ers and Ravens played off on Thanksgiving a couple seasons ago, the Ravens got 9 sacks on Alex Smith, but this is a whole different type of quarterback. Colin Kaepernick, for them, they've played RG3, they play Ben Roethlisberger, so they know the type of quarterback they're going up against in Kaepernick. I think the Ravens will be able to shut down Kaepernick. I think defensively, they'll game plan to stop him. Kaepernick, he will make some big plays. Frank Gore, I think, he'll have a good game. The Ravens against the run is still horrible, but in the end, I think it's the Baltimore Ravens. Justin Tucker kicks the game-winning field goal for the Ravens, 20-17 being the final score. Ravens win their second Super Bowl in franchise history, and the 49ers lose their first Super Bowl in franchise history as they are 5-0 in Super Bowls. It's going to be interesting to see if they're able to make it 6-0 on Sunday. Thank you so much for tuning in here. This has been the Front 7 podcast for Super Bowl 47. We will see how it will play out. We have the Ravens. We have Ray Lewis's last ride. Can Ray Lewis go out on top, a Super Bowl champion, or will Colin Kaepernick and the 49ers spoil Ray Lewis's Super Bowl party to send him out a loser? Will Joe Flacco answer his critics? Will he prove to be an elite quarterback? I am your host, Mike Presley, and thank you for tuning in to the Front 7 podcast, and see you right here on YouTube on February 22nd for the free agency preview. Enjoy the Super Bowl, everybody.
The boys are falling.